I'm going to call the Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 Select Board Meeting, Work Session.
Good job.
How's that? That work?
Very good job.
All right, our first discussion tonight is Wolfboro Single Track Alliance presentation.
So, Mr. Chairman, Chris Dow is here from Wolfboro Single Track Alliance. As you're aware, they have merged with NEMBA, so they are now referred to as the Greater Wolfboro NEMBA Group Chapter. You have in front of you the amendment to the license agreement that we have with them. This has been reviewed by legal counsel. It's been sent back to Chris. I think Chris and his group are fine with it, to my knowledge. And Chris has got some information for you and proposed work for 2025. And I believe that the chapter representative, Mary, is online, Chris.
Okay, great. So yeah, and I know I didn't do this last time, so Chris Dow, president of the Greater Wolfboro chapter of NEMBA. And we also do have somebody on the line from NEMBA. You want, Mary, are you able to speak? See if we can hear you?
The spaceship has landed.
So it shows her microphone live, but I'm not hearing anything. So.
Okay. Well, I will go, and if Mary, you can figure something out, just jump in, and we'll pivot if we have questions. But I did want to have somebody from NEMBA, as it was requested last meeting, to be able to maybe ask some questions. If the technology does not work today, we can definitely set up a secondary meeting and go through anything you'd like. So so I think what we wanted to do, number one, is talk through what I think pretty much for the most part, those that were involved last year on the Board of Selectmen are aware of some of the work that we're looking to do and kind of have already been on site, but I think for the sake of the town and the new folks on the board, we wanted to talk through, number one, the name change, and number two, just some thoughts on what we could do on the Abenaki property. So let's see if this works.
Maybe, nothing works.
Should be the bottom arrow, Chris.
Bottom arrow? Oh, down, okay.
Yeah, it's backwards.
Down is up, up is down.
Okay. Awesome. So the first and foremost, I just wanted to let you know that we have merged with NEMBA. So who is NEMBA? NEMBA is the New England Mountain Bike Association. And that organization is also a 501c3, so it is a nonprofit, and it has over 10,000 members, and they manage over 16,000 miles of trails throughout New England. And there's over 184 trail networks maintained. So with us coming into the fold, you know, it's adding another, primarily I'd say 3. We do still, Trask is still on, kind of out there, but we haven't really done much with that. And, you know, that could be a future thing that's part of the Wolfboro Conservation Commission, but I'd say for the most part, what we maintain and do work with is the Abenaki Network, Sewell Woods, and Fernald, which is over off of 109. So yeah, so I mean, I think essentially this is just a much larger organization that has a lot of the same intention. And part of the reasoning behind us merging with it was, you know, Brian had made some comments and had some thoughts previously about Wolfboro Single Track Alliance being a small organization and the town being kind of nervous what happens if we go away. And I'd say now that's not going to happen. Yeah, so.
Now become part of the board. Okay.
Yeah, so for visual identity, we did keep it close to what we did before, just for continuity and for folks to know what's going on, but we did incorporate the NEMBA logo into the Wolfboro Single Track Alliance logo. You know, obviously not terribly important for everybody to know, but did just want to show that there is some continuity there. And what does it mean, right? So the technical aspect of this, in having a 501c3, we had to file a dissolution with the state, which I believe I shared all the
They
documentation
have
with
it.
Jim, just so that it shows that on a specific date, did not exist, and we transferred our monies to a found 501c3. So we did all of the legal things that we needed to do to make sure nobody gets in trouble. And, you know, we're brought into the NEMBA organization as a chapter, which also went through a whole voting process, and we had to have conversations with them and everything. So a lot happened over the winter, really, to get us to the place where we are. And like I mentioned earlier, and Jim alluded to, you know, we've already amended the MOU with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust, and we're actually in talks with them about having a broader conversation about revisiting that with the Wolfboro Cross Country Ski Association, because there's actually new leadership at Lakes Region Conservation Trust. Just so that there's clear identification between what season does each organization have responsibility over, just because we tend to sometimes end up helping out even when it's not our season. So, and then also the MOU with the Conservation Commission, I believe that's done. I don't know if it's signed yet. I'll have to check with the group. And then you all have the one that I know the town attorney looked at, and I brought back to our group, which again, I think it's okay, but we can make sure. So another thing too, so we added a new treasurer, which is Zach. So with the NEMBA organization, they have, you know, bylaws and things like that. So we wanted to put some more people in some different roles to I think there was last year again, comments about, you know, more people doing multiple things and having checks and balances. So obviously we have to follow the rules of NEMBA and have people in the spots to do some of the managerial tasks and things like that. So, you know, not a huge change to really the same. It's kind of a lot of what we were doing, just a little bit of a different process, and just, again, being part of the larger entity. Any questions on the NEMBA aspect of this?
I just have a couple. I had a citizen call me today and just wondering where the insurance will fall. Is it NIMBA insurance, or is it NIMBA Wolfboro chapter insurance, or where does it come from?
So one of the benefits of merging with NEMBA is a lot of our requirements for filing with 501c3 and insurance and board of directors insurance and all of those things have now been able to be transferred to NEMBA. I confirmed with them, and I believe I sent the note to Jim a while ago that, you know, once everything is approved and formalized, we can do similar to what we did previously, where it shows NEMBA has the insurance and the town of Wolfboro is somebody that's covered under that. So, so that was kind of one of the first questions I asked when we talked to them, was making sure that it was all covered.
So we'll get a copy of the insurance binder that will be from NEMBA.
Yep.
And is it possible for us to have a copy of the bylaws for NEMBA?
I believe so. Mary, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Okay. All right.
Oh, goodness.
We can hear you, Mary.
We can hear you now.
Okay. So, did I just blow you all away? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good now.
Yeah, so my name is Mary McCarthy. I'd be happy to give you a little intro of why I'm here and who I am. Would that be helpful?
Perfect.
Sure.
Sure. So, my name is Mary McCarthy. I'm the secretary of the executive committee. And yes, as Chris indicated, the insurance is carried by Central NEMBA. Regional NEMBA is what it's called at the executive committee level. We've just gone through a very thorough board realignment, and so as soon as the revised bylaws are blessed, we'd be happy to share those with you. We've been navigating down to a more nimble board, and so yes, we'll be able to share our progress with you.
Okay, cool.
NEMBA has been around since 1987, and we are so excited to welcome the Wolfboro chapter to the community of 36 chapters. Do you guys have an echo, or is that just me?
It's a little bit of an echo, but it's not bad here.
Yeah, just her.
Okay. Okay. So in addition to being a secretary on the executive committee, I'm also the chapter president of Greater Boston. And my chapter happens to be the largest across the organization, but we love welcoming new chapters as it expands our network. NEMBA is committed to preserving open spaces and getting as many people on bikes as are interested. in getting on bikes, stewarding trails, maintaining trails, and sustaining an environment that is welcoming to multi-users, birders, walkers, hikers, and mountain bikers alike. So, yeah, I think one of the things that's so exciting about Wolfboro is that there is a radiant, a vibrant community of volunteers, and that's really what runs on, volunteers. We have about 3 staff, 2.5 to be precise, and thousands of volunteers who do our trail work and trail maintenance. And we have a really rich history of trail maintenance and trail building, supporting sustainability, sustainable practices. Are you guys all in a big room? How many of you are there right now?
I didn't hear the question.
How many of us are here right
There
now?
are 5,
Yes.
Yeah,
6, and
there's-
then probably 10 in the audience.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have. And if I don't, if I can't in this moment, I'd be happy to follow up via Chris.
Awesome, thank you. And I think to what Mary said, right, part of our initial conversations too was maintaining multi-use trails and having people have access to the area. So again, it felt very, we felt very aligned with what NEMBA was trying to do, right? So it just kind of made sense to be part of a larger organization. And I think also when it comes to outreach, members of NEMBA we can reach out to the whole audience via email and other channels for trail work days or other things like that, or if we do events. So it just kind of it's a larger microphone to some degree. So
Yeah. Lots of institutional knowledge.
John Thurston, Selectman. So do you have any restrictions for the town asking for fees for non-residents to use the trail system?
We work, as far as NEMDA is concerned, we work closely with land managers and honor their operating procedures. So, in Rhode Island, there are very different restrictions than there are in Connecticut, and if it's Wolfboro's practice to charge riders, that would be the land manager's prerogative, I suppose. I don't know of any other in the organization right now that charge fees. Is that general practice in Wolfboro?
So we're establishing a new fee structure, and it was a question that I was presented with from other members of the community, and whether or not a liability disclaimer should be used for riders when they participate using the course.
Right. So we have a waiver for all of our group rides any ride that we lead, the users sign a waiver, whether they're members or not. And our rides are open to the public. And generally, we're very specific about whether or not it's an adult over 18 or if it's a kids and family ride. So as I mentioned, I'm not aware of any fees associated with using land at this time, but I think that that's probably a very chapter-specific opportunity or challenge as it may be.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and I think from historical purposes, we've provided our time and money for this to be a free activity, a free ecosystem for folks on bikes. But obviously, if the town is looking to charge or have conversations, we're open to understand what that would look like. So, any other questions? Because I know Mary does have to leave at
5:30, yeah.
at 5:30. I don't know what time it is now. So we get 15 more minutes, but we can jump right into the next piece here too.
I have one question. You're asking us to sign this tonight? Are we going to need to make a motion, sign this tonight, or are you doing as information and then we're going to have it on another agenda?
I think it should be on another agenda
Okay.
to sign. I just
Okay.
want clarification from Chris's attorney
Okay.
that he was good with it. And maybe you said he was good with it, Chris, I don't recall.
I can check my email and I didn't see the red lines. I just saw the document that was amended. It seemed like it read pretty much the same as before. So from a non-attorney, it looked okay to me.
Well, we're going to have another meeting next Wednesday. I have no problem. I just didn't know
Okay.
about tonight.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
So we can have that on for next week.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it simply would be in your signature folder next week if we move forward.
Okay, awesome. So when looking at, as I mentioned before, the Wolfboro Single Track Alliance had previously seen multiple trail networks. Really, when it comes to the Board of Selectmen in the town, it's only Abenaki because that's the town-owned property. So just for those, that are newer to the conversation, just wanted to kind of make that clear. So,
It's Abenaki and the spray fields.
sorry, and the spray fields,
Okay,
yes.
good.
The abutting property on the backside
Thank
that
you.
goes towards Filter Bed Road and the water treatment facility. So, so for any of this work, we've previously come and shared kind of the goals and objectives. So for this year specifically, our objective really is to continue to separate the trails, to be directional, because again, that's something I think we've heard throughout conversations over the years with the Board of Selectmen, to be able to have more separation for downhill and uphill traffic. There are some trails that are bi-directional, which is, it's fine and there haven't been issues, but if there are instances where we can separate to have clear up and down, I just think it makes sense. And I think another thing that we wanted to consider is at certain intersections or places where trails come together, just make sure that it naturally is slowing people down, whether it's by way of signage or, making the traffic of the trail go uphill, things like that, which are all things that we've done and will continue to do. So we kind of call these hubs, where it's just, maybe it's a couple flat rocks where people could sit down or things like that, but just areas where the trails kind of naturally come together, where somebody might take a rest and have a drink of their water bottle and then go on. So it's a rest stop and a kind of a traffic, something that will slow down traffic, I guess. And then the piece here is building a green downhill option to round out the difficulty options at Abenaki. So currently it's really, for the mountain bike in the single track, is blue and black, I would say. So if you're familiar with ski trails with those types of ratings, green being the easiest, blue being intermediate, and black being advanced. And then another thing that we're trying to do is continue to separate the bike trails from the cross-country ski trails, which is something that we've been doing I'd say mostly over at Sewell Woods, because Fernald is specific to mountain biking and snowshoeing, so there aren't any cross-country ski trails there. But I think it's, to kind of ease the mind of the folks that are part of the cross-country ski, even though we don't really ride there in the winter. But it just, keeps traffic off of their trails, and we have our own stuff to maintain. And I think also, as we continue to talk about signage, which I know is something that it's an evolving conversation, just having clear markings of, this is a bike trail, this is a ski trail, this is what this means in the summer, this is what this means in the winter, just so it's very clear to the people out there what's going on. And then we also have some proposed stuff for additional types of trails, including 2 enduro trails and another section of Blue Flow. And I think the additional blues were, I think Brian had commented at one point, what are you thinking? How many more trails do you want to build? So what we wanted to do was kind of give a vision of how to use the land, but also so we don't really want it to get saturated, right? You want to be in the woods and feel like you're in the woods, not next to a billion people on all these different trails. So what we're proposing here is a really good sense for stuff that's going to still maintain that kind of nature feel and not be too congested or kind of overbuilt. And I think there's another thing in there too that just shows a new entrance off of Filter Bed, which again would connect that parking lot and keep things off of the cross-country ski trails. So are there any questions on the overarching work before I just kind of go through the next few slides?
Dave? Ask a question. Yeah. So I'm clearly a novice here in catching up. Is this the coveted trail map that we've all been asking for?
I don't think so. I presented this plenty of times and nobody likes it.
Look at this one. I'm going to see if we can light it up here.
Yeah.
Is this the coveted trail map? It's not.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay,
It's representative of what is out there, but I think town would like to see something
but you got to
in a
propose.
different
too.
format.
Yeah, that's why I was in it, because when I saw propose, I said, oh. So, okay, so we don't have a trail map yet, but we're making, this gives us progress for the people who are concerned about it? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just either yes or it doesn't. Either we're going backwards or we're going forward.
no, I think we have more of, like, we have the snowshoe trails on there, we have cross-country ski trails, which we didn't have before, so we're getting closer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has everything there, but visually, I think the town would like to see maybe some different contour maps or coloring or things like that, but
Also some, I think it's the GPS coordinates, so we can know exactly where this spot is or that spot. I thought that was also going to be put on.
And the reason I bring it up is, I've sat here and listened to this, and I agree, we need to have a map. I don't know what should be on it, I don't know whether we do GPS, I don't know whether all trails can, I don't know what it is. But when I saw this, I said, ooh, have we crossed the Rubicon and got clarity? So we're moving in the right direction, but we're not at the point. Okay, so how do we get to the point?
That was part of the scope of our planning department, and I don't need to say much about that, I don't think.
All right, got it. Thanks, keep going.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So what I was thinking about with the map was, if somebody got injured on the course, we could quadrant those areas in numbers so that people could be identified in a safety manner, and basically they weren't wondering where they were going if somebody needed to be rescued.
No, that's right.
Yep. Yeah, I know previously, and I see him behind me, so I don't know if he wants to come up here and say anything. But, we've talked about this with fire rescue and kind of their concerns with managing having to rescue folks out there. The Wolfboro Single Track Alliance did provide them with a rescue litter that's made out of titanium and has a wheel and can kind of get through out there, because, we felt that would help them in the case of an emergency situation. I believe Tom said you were okay with, because if somebody calls in, that sends them their GPS coordinates from their phone.
Yeah, but if somebody knows they're on Area 25, they can maybe
Yeah,
do
but
a
I mean,
little bit more finer of an area.
But I think that the short of it is, I think, that would be, I would look towards them to figure out how we should put that on the map of what's important for the folks that would need to get out there.
So what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking about the everyday person who's on the trail all the time, and they're saying, well, we're going to bike Area 25 or Area 23 today, so that basically if somebody gets hurt and they need to make a panicking call, they kind of have a general idea where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was also looking for, we get this piece of map, and to try to pinpoint from the map to where it is on the land. I've walked out there, and so if we have a coordinate, we could look at it and say, yeah, I know where that is, and I think that would help us understand where the trails are.
Yeah.
Thank you. If it helps, we have met with Chris and the group a number of times over the last couple of years. We've identified extraction points. They've provided us with that terrific piece of equipment. And we will continue to work with them to, what Selectman Thurston said is not a bad idea. We're working, I think, towards being able to get a little more specific.
Sure.
We do have, the advantage we have if a 911 call is placed is that that phone can be pinged to within about 3 feet. So that's helpful, but I concur that if we have some kind of a marking or signage that helps people say, who maybe aren't familiar, say, I'm looking at this sign with this number or this letter on it, that gets us that much closer. But yeah, we're working towards that, and I think it's a bit of a work in progress, but it's we've made a lot of strides over the years, and that rescue litter is a big help in terms of actually extricating a patient who needs assistance.
Well, this is certainly more than what we've had.
Yep. So Chris, another thing I was thinking is on all the signs, you could have a QR code.
Yeah.
And so that most bikers use Strava, use something, and most of them have a cell phone on them when they're riding because they know if they get hurt or whatever, they need to, call for help or whatever. If they had a QR code, they could scan it and it shows the entire trail map. And they can know where they are instantly and know where in and out is and all the trails. It's like they used to have, and they still have some over in Sewell Woods that has a map of everything that you find at some intersections.
Yep.
But a QR code on each sign would be something so that they would always have a whole map of the area right at their phone instantly.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's something that as we propose potential signage options, that could be a, just so it's immediate and you just scan the code and it brings up the trail map. It's not a bad idea. I mean, that could just be incorporated into the post or whatever we did out there.
You want to continue with the maps, then? You have any other maps?
Yeah, so the existing trails, this is pretty much inclusive of everything, right? The proposed work for 2025 are the green, the small dots. It's getting a little harder to, this is where a cartographer would probably be very helpful for figuring out how to put these up there, but anything that's green dotted, mostly on the top part of the map and over towards the top where parking is underneath the words proposed 2025 work, is the majority of it. And then there was another option coming down from the Summit Hub down to Screaming Eagle towards the bottom, say between Free Fall and Screaming Eagle. So, those, the majority, I think there's 1, 2, 3 of them would be blues, and one would be the green from the top to the filter bed parking lot area. So the green flow, this is, I tried to separate the layers, so this is what you would be seeing when you see it on the green flow page is from the Summit Hub. It would go, and I realized after I sent this over, the dotted line is below. It should be above that other dash green line, but it is flagged out there, and we can amend this. But in between those two picnic tables, it basically, if you're at the top of, next to Tossin Cookies, it would be on the uphill side versus the downhill side. And then the rest of it goes down where it should. But this would be about 1.5 miles, I believe, is what I have to go, it's down at the last slide with the feet, but this would be a very beginner-focused run with, like, everything would be pretty much rollable. You can go down through and it'd be kind of a very smooth, very flowy, is kind of the idea of a flow trail, is just to get people so that they can get a taste for kind of the downhill biking aspect, but it's not in any way like aggressive. And this is honestly, I think, would be, and I've mentioned this before, probably the most ridden trail at Abenaki if we were to do this. I know I would bring my kids there right as soon as it was done and try to get them into mountain biking as much as I like it. But this is, I think, would be a very big advancement for Abenaki.
Chris, just a point of clarification for me.
Yep.
And maybe you just said it. Can you just use the pointer and show me where last year's work that installed those boardwalks are?
The boardwalks are down like,
They're not along the.
And this
where
is
it
what
says
makes it
Tommy
hard
Boy,
for
right?
us. I mean, I've gone out and seen the boardwalks, but when you give me
can't
this
find it.
map, I'd have no idea.
Are they just below the Tommy Boy, the red?
it's like right in this area, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah. So maybe we need to put the boardwalks on the map too.
okay.
Yeah, structures, the 2 jumps that we have
Yeah.
and the boardwalks and stuff like that, we can, because that helps you also orient yourself. Because you go by them and you see them all the time, and then you know that's where they are, you see them on the map, and it helps people orient themselves.
For sure.
Can you show on the pointer again where the flow trail is above instead of below?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So it would be right here, not right there.
Oh, so it goes
Okay.
in between the two.
Yeah,
We go this way.
it's just on the uphill side. So if you were walking up, Tossin Cookies at the top, right before you get to the very edge, it's just the uphill side of it.
When you asked us to build this trail before, and by mistake you built another trail, is this in the same place?
So this, so this is, the reason the other one had shifted is it was going to be a climb, and the trail builder had found that it would be better to go down in this area and up in the other area. So that's where Tommy Boy is. Yeah, so I guess the short answer is yes. This is in that same exact zone where it's just kind of,
You built the top one, and now you're coming back to the one that we had approved, and as I recall, it stopped at the summit.
yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm in the right place here. Okay. And so, keep on going, I'll
Okay.
make
Yeah.
comments later.
How many of the 5 hubs on this picture exist right now?
The Summit Hub exists right now.
Yeah, that's what I thought so, too.
That's the only one?
And there is one that's not on this picture, which is below the Summit Hub, where at the top of Screaming Eagle, where the first part of the trail was built like 2-3 years ago, when you just cross the double track right before you start going downhill again, there is one there as well.
It's right in here, I think.
I can see it on the next map.
Yeah.
So this one exists and that one exists.
Yeah, there's two.
2 of them that are just above the ski trails.
Yes.
That's, okay, yep, all right.
Yeah, and then, I mean, both of them are basically just kind of cleared out areas, probably from here to the stage, that have some
So we're having a course in chartography.
stones where you can sit.
Cartography.
So when you do your thing here, you call it Blue Enduro and Blue Flow.
Yes.
I mean, I'm thinking like, what's the difference?
So a flow line is going to be more dirt that's smoothed out. Enduro typically has rock features and things that are a little bit more. Different people like different types of bike trails, and enduro is a little bit more challenging, kind of like an older style single track mountain bike trail, which would still have like roots and things like that, where a flow trail would kind of dig those roots out as you go through.
So would it be beneficial to give somebody a description on an area before they tackle that area?
As far as signage?
Yes.
Oh, for sure, yeah,
So
and
that's in the
that's where, I think at the end, there's some ideas for
Some ideas
signage,
back there. Signs.
where there's different types of, like jumps and drops and, do not enter and all those sorts of things.
Pretty pictures. Okay. I think this is great.
And the next piece here was the new entrance from the filter bed parking. This area, and I don't know what the plan is for that parking lot over the course of road construction and things like that, but that is an area that a lot of people do park aside from the Abenaki side. It is over off of the end of Filter Bed Road, and there is an entrance where the internet cross-country ski trail is now, but we saw an area where if we did a wooden boardwalk through one section, you could kind of go straight across and then be able to keep everything off of the cross-country ski trail. So that's kind of the idea of this piece here, would be that kind of final step of getting everything off the double track. Yeah, and then the Blue Enduro and the Blue Flow. Again, this whole area is nowhere near spray fields, nowhere near ski trails, cross-country ski trails, and this has been walked, I believe, by quite a few people at this point, that whole zone. So everything is flagged, and we, should anything be approved, we would go back out and revisit everything and rewalk everything and confirm that everybody is okay with where everything is. So. And then the only other thing on the front was the Blue Enduro, which would be on the Abenaki ski area side, that goes down near where the existing free fall trail is, and then winds through those kind of gladed woods area in between the 2 ski trails and connect down in with Screaming Eagle. I think that's it for the, yeah.
So the Green Flow terminates at the Tomahawk hub that you want to build, and then it reaches there, and then there's 2 blue trails, but it continues through Tomahawk as a green trail and then comes out the other side.
Yeah, so the green, and there's some line items in here for like additional trail separation and things like that. So there are certain areas where right now Tomahawk and the greens share the trail. So if we were able to separate them, it would just, we'd put a certain amount of distance in between in some of these areas again.
Two blue trails, which are a little more difficult below.
So which one are you looking at?
Right here.
I think he's looking.
So this is the green flow, I assume, that comes through here, and then there's two blue that are behind it. So someone can still use the green all the way gently, all the way to the Summit Hub.
Yes.
And if they want to, they can come off of that and go on a more technical blue flow trail, or still a little bit more technical enduro
Yes.
flow trail.
Yeah, so any of the, like that section where you were looking at, Brian, the travel is going from this direction down, and this whole area would be green, and these two would be the blues. And then when you get to the hub here, you'd be getting back onto a green, and then you could go back up the green climb trail to the top and ride back down again.
So it's down from left to right. Makes sense, it's a Summit Hub.
Yeah.
The Summit.
Yeah. So that, then that's kind of the idea, is that, if you were riding too with your kids and you wanted to do the blue section and they want to do the green, you all could meet up again and ride up to the top. So the trail builder is called these kind of like session areas where you could, do laps in certain parts of the mountain, similar to how with Screaming Eagle, you can ride from the top to the lower hub and then do that as just you don't have to go all the way to the bottom of the mountain. You can just ride the top part. So we're just trying to think of ways to break things up and keep them separated. Any other questions on that stuff?
I have a question on the bridge material. So, like your deck in your backyard over time gets this like film over the top of it. And then if you're out there on a bike and you start to go in a damp condition and the tire kicks out, it's like, so do you have any plan on putting grit on these things, or what do you have for a long-term plan?
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of what we've been doing recently is the hemlock, and some of, basically, number one, for thickness purposes. And there are, and this is something I think Joe might have spoken to previously about, like the ability, you can roll on grit and things like that, or in certain areas, if it was a concern, especially if it was like a turn or something, they can put like a cover.
It's absolutely a concern for me. I'm hearing you talk about kids and so forth out there, and they're not as experienced as older riders, and so it really does concern me.
Yep. Yeah, so and that sort of stuff, like adding a finish to the top, like a sanded grit, that's something that could be done, yeah. And I would do that per the recommendation of, NEMBA and the Trail Builder, but I understand what you're asking for sure.
I'm wondering if the board thinks that we should take the map and have a meeting with the cross-country ski group. Chris said there's a new president of it.
Lakes Region Conservation Trust has a new person, not the Cross Country Ski Association.
Okay.
So, but they do, the Lakes Region Conservation Trust does want to speak with the organizations involved with the land management about amending the MOU, but.
Okay. I'm wondering if we should look at, have these trails, have the map looked at by our Wolfboro Cross Country Ski Association, just to make sure that they know where the trails are going. Have they seen this?
I know Steve used to have a copy of some of our maps at the store, so I don't know if he's seen this specific one.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I was in there looking for a helmet for my mother-in-law, and I showed this to him on my phone, so he has, at least Steve has seen them.
So it's up to the board if we think that it would be nice, just so that everybody's good neighbors and everybody knows what's being built and what's happening, and because one group has to maintain it in the winter, one group has to maintain it in the summer,
Yeah.
so on and so
Well,
on.
but I think what I see here is that it very clearly, we know what's the cross-country ski, and they're moving away from it.
Yep.
So to me, that is a plus.
It's not bad to show somebody a plus, too.
I think the question that's being asked is, should the board convene the two parties and let them talk amongst themselves, or can they do it themselves? That's what I interpret there. I may be wrong. Can you do that with those folks?
Yeah, I mean, we
Then do it.
could formally do something, but, I mean, like I said, I was in there last week or the week before, and I did show Steve and explained what we were trying to do, and
But I think Brian's point, which is appropriate, is, and I'm not suggesting you just did this, but doesn't count. You have to sit down and kind of thrash at it for a bit. So you'll do that, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
and then
So we can check on that.
You've done that in the past with them, am I correct? That
Yeah,
you've talked to them? I've talked to, Steve, he knew about it. So
Yeah.
that is a standard.
Yeah.
And when we do these things, that you will keep them up to date.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean,
Okay,
and that's
I'm
like,
fine.
we helped pay for some of the bridges last year in Sewell Woods, and, there's an ongoing collaboration between us and them. And I mean, in some of the stone dust too, management, that was like, we fixed some of the areas last year with,
Oh, that's a question. I saw two accounts.
Yep.
That you have in your financials. One of them, I assume, is the old Pathways Committee account?
yes, that's not, the total amount is not all pathways, but yes, one of the accounts is for restricted funds, so we keep that separate from our normal ledger.
Yep.
So there are, like, people have donated specifically to like a pump track and other things, so that's in one, and then the general fund is another.
Okay.
That's great.
The one other thing too that we wanted to just make sure we revisit this year and come up with a plan is the boardwalk, that, the bridge that became the boardwalk, the whatever, that is still sitting next to where it was 2 years ago at this point, I think. Just to come up with a plan for that one section. Because I know it was already approved, but, and I'm not necessarily looking to have a vote again on this specific piece, but just to go and come up with a plan of what we actually want to do out there, so.
So can you fill me in on the boardwalk since I wasn't here?
Sure. So this boardwalk, because I don't want to call it a bridge, because bridge has a bad connotation. When one of the trails was built, there was a wet area, and one of the RSAs that Brian had made us aware of at one point was you cannot touch a stone wall. So the bridge went over the stone wall, and the town felt that I believe the height of it might be concerning, so it was taken down. So, and then wanted to have information on just trail building best practices, and before it was allowed, just let's revisit this and just talk about it. So I had reached out to the NEMBA, I'd reached out to the Vermont Mountain Bike Association, Stowe Trails, things like that, just to see if a bridge of that nature needed a railing, or the types of construction practices. Overwhelmingly, they came back and said, no, you shouldn't put a railing on something like that. I think one of the things that we thought about would be potentially to raise some of the surrounding area with some dirt and have put a culvert under to try to help some of the drainage and maybe make the boardwalk bridge a little less high. So it's kind of taking care of a couple different pieces there. So that's kind of I see Linda here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Dave for permission to say something.
Oh, sure.
Okay, you all right? Dave? I have this picture. Are we talking about this? This is when we were going to do it, and I thought it turned into this.
That is the one that was at the top of the spray field area, those two, the up and the down. That was last
Okay,
year.
that's up by the spray field.
Yes.
Yep.
This is the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and that was completed, am I correct?
It was completed, and then it was taken down, and then you said we could do it again, but then it was said, wait, we need to stop and talk about railings.
Okay, so there's nothing there now?
The wood is sitting right next to where it needs to be.
That was where I was confused. I wasn't quite, I have this picture and
Yeah.
Okay, nope, okay, thank
So-
you.
And what trail is this bridge a part of?
This one here on the screen, the boardwalk,
Yeah.
that would be on the Tommy Boy, the uphill climb, the green.
The one that was built last year?
Yeah, the trail that exists now, yes.
Okay. And right now, it just has dirt,
Yeah,
Like this.
It's all blocked off now, yeah.
Okay,
and is it rideable, that
No.
piece? No.
No, there's caution tape, the trail has been diverted, we did work to make it so you can't.
Okay. Where you diverted it, is it acceptable, or would you prefer it here?
So on this picture, you can see the dark area right here is always wet, pretty much even in the middle of July when it's really hot out. So what we were thinking is if we could put a culvert from this side down, and then build some of the ground up here, it would then, I think, alleviate the concern of the bridge, which would be going uphill from being too high, and then it could also make this a downhill. So if we were able to do trail separation there, it would solve, I think, a couple problems, just by the drainage, reinstalling the bridge, and doing an up and a down. So I think, again, that one, technically, I think was approved at one point to put back in, but I think I just want to walk it with everybody and say this is what we want to do here and make sure everybody is okay when you're looking at it in person and really understanding what we're...
Yeah, I think what happened was, I know that my front steps, if I have more than 3 steps, I need a railing per building code, and I think that's what happened is we have a building code and it's town property, and if it was a certain height, railings have to be installed, but we know that railings aren't good. They catch handlebars,
Yep.
and then people fall down.
Yep.
So,
Brian, you have to differentiate between landscaping and wood structure, because there's a difference. So my question to you is that on the left side of the spray fields, just off the backside of Jennifer Circle? When you go up the parking lot from Filter Bed, on the left-hand side, you get up to the top up there, and the spray fields are on the right. I think I was up there and saw an area similar to that.
I mean, if you, those housing developments are on the left out in the woods in that area. I don't know, I'm not looking at the map, but I know Jennifer Circle's somewhere up in that zone.
It runs really right near the stone wall
Yeah.
near those properties.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it just looked like a very tough, bony area for you to cross. So what's your objective?
So, I mean, the original idea with that bridge is to, in the purpose of the kind of the green uphill, it was a direct path with a minimal grade to get up over, whereas the other part was really rough and wet and kind of not as easy, really. So that's, we're trying to solve the green uphill problem of being, having an easy path to get up. And then, if we were to do that, what I was proposing with the downhill was build that up a little bit and put some drainage in to have the downhill be able to go next to it but not interfere with it. So
the problem that you have, though, is if you manipulate the grade with drainage, you're in a wetland setback area. So are you taking that in consideration? So what I'm thinking about is a wood built-up area. Again, I'd rather see you just build it up with your wood framing and then just go over the top of it.
yeah, I mean, and that, I think honestly the bikers would love that more. I think we're hesitant based off of previous experience with putting in wood structures. But if that's the recommendation, again, I think it would make sense.
That's just my recommendation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it would make sense if we walked out there and just had that conversation.
And I think part of the problem with wood structures, we didn't always know that there was wood structures there. So I think that's the other piece. I do know that, and I brought this, I think this was a master plan at some time, and there was a picture of these raised bridges.
Oh, yeah.
And this was what I understood the board was not interested in going to that kind of bridges, opposed to what these are, I think we're going to call them boardwalks.
Boardwalks, yes.
Very different looking types of structure.
Yep.
Okay.
No, totally agree. I mean, and I think that would, we would be on board with that sort of solution as well.
now, when you're building something in the woods, how do we address something, we now know to address stone walls on public property. Stone walls can't be broken apart, which has happened in the past, and they can't be knocked down, they can't be moved. But what do we do with regards to any kind of wetland delineation or anything like that? Is it okay to build a boardwalk through a wetland area? Do we have to get permission from any group, organization? Does it have to be wetland flagging, or
Yep.
what do we do with that?
Yeah, so in situations in Sewell Woods and in Fernald where there's a specific crossing, they have, I believe they're called puncheon bridges, and there's different types of bridges or crossings that are allowed
Right.
over certain distances. So in the past, if there was a, very clear wetland area where it's, cattails or whatever, ferns, things like that. I know that Dan, who's on the Wolfboro Single Track Board and is part of the Wolfboro Conservation Commission, he's been able to go out and submit those permits to the state if they were needed based off of, I don't know all the rules, but if it's like certain lengths or types of crossings, and has all the types of plans and know how to get that stuff done. So yeah, if there's anything in question, we can definitely.
All right, so if you do that in Abenaki, can we have copies of that documentation for our files?
Yep.
If you have to do any wetland permitting or anything like that?
Yeah, 100%.
I think we would have to sign off on it as the
Yeah.
property owner anyways.
Yeah.
I guess my only concern here is that I wonder whether we want to do this in phases. I have no problem okaying the green flow trail that got swapped the time before. Then when we start looking at adding and get that in, get that solid, get the bridge done, before we start adding more trails, and I guess more trails down through the ski area.
Yep.
Is kind of mine, is kind of do it, you get that done. And I think if I look on the back, and I can't tell whether that is the full area for the 168,000.
So, yeah, so if we want to go to that last page as far as so the green flow would be, I think if we're going to go that direction and try to phase things out, I would say probably at a minimum, green flow in some of those hubs, to make those areas for have people to congregate. I think.
Which hubs would you want first?
So anything that really goes along that green flow trail. So I mean, I think that would be inclusive in that $8,000 line item scenario. But just so you have the trail, and if we come to another trail and cross it, we do a little bit of work to make that so it's more apparent that it's a trail crossing.
I can see the Tomahawk hub and the hub just to the left of the Summit hub, because eventually you're going to have those three trails that connect the two.
Yep.
So is that the hubs that you consider the most important now, or do you have a different idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think improve the intersections to create new upper hubs, yes, that would be inclusive of that area. I just think that's kind of more of a, you don't have to do it if you're crossing another trail, but I think it would make sense to have the trail builder spend a little time widening it out and making it very apparent that two trails are coming together just for safety reasons.
And then I would do the separation of Tommy Boy, Tomahawk, Black Eye, and Green Flow. So it's really the top three.
Yep.
And then kind of get that done and get that in, and then we can look at another time. I just don't want to get to the point, this still is that one area, take out Abenaki, is still our spray fill area.
Yep.
Right now, we're spraying. Who knows 5 years from now whether we'll have to use it for another type of effluent disposal, because our RIB sites will only take 340 million gallons, where the plant can do 600,000.
Yep.
So that it's our effluent that is limiting. So that's the other reason why I thought maybe we go and keep it up there, and that's my concern. I don't know where anybody
Yeah,
else.
and I think any of the proposed stuff too still stays very clear of that, but as far as if you wanted to phase it, I think we're agreeable to that sort of scenario, so.
So Linda, one of the three hubs, were you considering the Summit hub one of the three that you were talking?
No, that's already there.
That's already there, okay.
I get that.
It gets confusing.
Yeah, I know that one's there,
Yeah.
for sure.
So the two to the left, I think would be a good start. They're near the top. And the flow trail seems like something that would work for everyone.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you get to ride with your kids.
I hope so. I hope they like it.
But I'm with Linda. I think that for Wolfboro as a whole, slow, controlled growth for everything, for our planning, our zoning, for recreation areas, whether it be, pickleball or whatever.
Yep.
It's good to phase things in.
Yep. Yeah, no, and again, like I said, I mean, I just wanted to give a better picture for what we see as potential.
That's good.
Okay.
Can I summarize?
Anything else?
Or do we need a motion? You're looking for an approval?
That would be nice.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the board approves the green flow for $168,000, the trail separation, Tommy Boy, Tommy Hawk, Black Eye, and green flow for $23,000, and improved intersection created at the upper hub for $8,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Do we have a timetable on those?
So I believe as of last time I talked, and I appreciate you guys taking this in a week instead of 2 weeks, but the trail builder had mentioned that probably end of June or beginning of July would be the first or the latest you would get up here. So the ground will be very dry at that point, so there's no concern for it being too damp. Hopefully, I mean, it stops snowing and it warms up. But
So you have a start date and a end date?
so yeah, I think for the green flow for this type of work, I think it'd probably be 6 to 8 weeks. I just
For the green flow?
for the green flow and what was just approved. I'll confirm with them, but I think the anticipated timeline, it was like a month and a half to 2 months of work.
And could you keep us updated on mappage and signage?
Yeah, so I mean, I think again, what it would be good now that, if this is the approved work, let's set up a time and go out there and walk and like we did with the 2 bridges or boardwalks last year, make sure everybody's on the same page. And, if there are kind of ideas or things we want to bat around for whether it's the wood and something to make it less slippery. And then, but I think for trail planning or planning purposes to get the wheels moving and, get somebody, motivated to get up here to do the building, this part is key, right? So, but the rest of this we can figure out.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thanks, Chris.
Chris, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so from this point, I will work with Chris, because we'll have to schedule a public hearing for the donation of funds, because the contract with the trail builder will be with the town. And as soon as he can get that contract over to us for review, we'll look at that, and we'll get the public hearing scheduled.
Okay.
I'd also like to be able to go out and meet with Chris and walk the area.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, no, definitely. I know the one last thing, I probably want me to get out of here, it's already taken a while. One of the things we started to do too is I was putting together a list of all the trails and whether they've been cleaned or not, because I think you mentioned
Yes,
that
I
last
did.
time. I'm trying to figure out a way to put that on the internet so people can see it real time on what needs to be raked or leaf blown and things like that. So when I talked to the group after our last meeting here about trail maintenance, they kind of said the same thing back to me as well. I want it to warm up and stop snowing so then we can start scheduling these things. But it's top of mind, and we're even actually when I was talking to Steve, there was some stuff at Sewell Woods where some trees came down in one of the recent storms. So we're already tallying all the things that we need to take care of. So, but yeah, I mean, let's set up a time and walk out there.
I try to speak for the quiet group. In Sewell Woods, where I walk for an hour to an hour and a half a day, there are a lot of older folks, some from my neighborhood. There are a lot of little kids with bikes. There are men and women with strollers and whatnot. And so I'm hoping that we can get a better job on our stone dust trails at Abenaki and the stone dust trails on Sewell Woods, because the people with the least amount of mobility use those trails. And I don't want them excluded. There's a gentleman, I can't remember his name, he walks from downtown on his 2 arm crutches. He's had multiple strokes. He walks all the way from downtown to Sewell Woods, around the Sewell stone dust trails, and then goes back home.
Yep.
And that's the kind of person that I don't want to get left out.
Yeah, no, and that's actually something that we had talked about with some of the funds of, let's do an evaluation and see like if we can use more of those funds, because I mean, we've had things delivered and cleaned up certain areas and fixed the whole drainage issue last year for Steve and the Cross Country Ski Association, but if there needs to be a wholesale bunch of work, I mean, we do have money to do it, so.
Okay.
And that's, again, kind of goes back to Lakes Region Conservation Trust conversation about just revising the MOU and getting it all done, so.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with Don Berry recently about the world of trails, and it was a really good conversation. I also put in a call to Nicole Friedman. Have you met her? Yeah, because I just wanted to have a conversation with her, just to introduce myself and to talk to her. She seems like a very nice lady.
Yes, yeah, no, she couldn't make it tonight. I guess the last thing I'll say too with the NEMBA organization, and actually there's a couple of people from the Central and Seacoast that I reached out to a lot of people to try to have somebody come, but they do a mud season social where they basically get everybody together and organize trail maintenance and things like that.
That sounds like a bunch of fun.
No, but I think, again, part of our hesitation previously with the liability that was on myself and the other board members of the Wolfboro Single Track Alliance was hosting any sort of event where you charge any sort of money to do any sort of anything opened us up big time to liability. But now with NEMBA, we can have larger things like this, and it, I think, would be beneficial for the town and our organization. So, that's again part of the reason we did the move. So, all right. Well, thank you. I will let these other people do.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, is it okay, as board, that somebody talks to this as well?
I'm fine.
Okay.
My name is Chuck Sumner. I've met most of you, John. I just met you tonight. Just wanted to introduce myself as somebody who stepped forward last late summer, early fall to say I would be happy to be the go-between between the town and the club. I'm a mountain biker, love to mountain bike, but I'm also on a couple of boards for the town, and I like to think I'm a responsible citizen, so I would represent you as well as the club in kind of coordinating this and making sure that we do what we say we're going to do. If you'd like to walk with me, I'm glad to do it as well. I'm retired, have more time than Chris.
And he claims to be a responsible person, so I mean, 1 out of 2.
Ryan, to your point, the guy on crutches that walks every day, he's a neighbor of mine. Jesse Walker is his name.
Jesse, I couldn't remember Jesse's first name.
He's a neighbor, a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And he's a former mountain biker, by the way. He can't mountain bike now, but
Yeah.
he loves the work that we're doing. So
Yep. And
he's a good spokesman for us.
I saw an older couple with their grandchild and walking a little dog the other day. And there's a lot of people that need the easy walking and low mobility trails. I've actually in Sewell seen someone on one of their mobility scooters riding around. And so that's
There's a need for that, and there's also a need for the other trails that we're talking about. I have a grandson, 13 years old, who likes to mountain bike, and I will take him up some of these new trails once they're built. So I think it's a good thing for young kids. I think I mentioned to Linda that there's a mountain bike race team over at Brewster, and they train up at Abenaki, and they would use the new trails, like the flow trail and the enduro trail that we won't build yet, but the more challenging trails are ones that they would probably like to train on at some point. So there is a lot of use and a lot of interest from the different parts of the community for all of this.
We've come a long way. We're creating a nice, safe environment for everybody to recreate on. And that's an important
Yeah.
thing.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is the discussion of the default budget.
Okay.
Jim.
I just want to go through a couple of things, try to hopefully clarify a couple of things, and hopefully we can get to the point of moving the line item transfers forward. First of all, as we're well aware, the default budget is our operating budget for 2025. The default budget was created based on the 2023 approved budget. When the default budget was approved under RSA 4013, Roman numeral 9, lowercase b, that is the definition of the default budget. However, there's the question about how do we move forward as a community and continue to fund things that may have been taken out of the default budget. RSA 3210 defines that a default budget is a reason for the Board of Selectmen to move forward and perform line item transfers to increase and decrease line items within the budget. However, we cannot create new line items. We can only make adjustments to the line items that are currently in existence. The bulk of our line item transfers fall within ambulance services, Parks and Rec administration salaries, and Abenaki rentals and leases. That is a large portion of our funds required to continue the town moving forward. The other funds are associated with wage adjustments. RSA 3762 authorizes me as a town manager to set compensation for staff. So that takes a walk of how we go from the default budget, which gets approved, how we're able to make some line item transfers, and how compensation gets adjusted for non-union staff. We did go through, we initially identified approximately $110,000 in wage adjustments required for the non-union staff. We were able to go in, actually make the line item transfers, which you have in front of you as a recommendation, and we were able to slightly reduce that number. Now, when we move forward and we develop the 2026 budget, we have to go back and base that 2026 budget on the 2023 approved budget. So the question becomes, okay, if last year we issued wage adjustment to the non-union staff, how is that captured? Well, it is not captured in the default budget. My conversation with department heads has been, you manage that in the bottom line of your budget for those wage adjustments. You're a manager, you have the ability to manage your budget. I trust you to do that. I'll work with you to do that, and we can handle that within the bottom line of your budget. However, we need to make adjustments for this year's wages, which we're recommending at 5%. That is consistent with the two collective bargaining agreements, and that was what was proposed to the Board of Selectmen in January for the proposed budget. So in front of you tonight, you have the full detail of funding to maintain the municipal operations for the town of Wolfboro, including groomer lease, supervisory salaries and Parks and Rec adjustment, ambulance service, public safety building, some technology issues, and the wage adjustments. The first page and a half, as you roll through that and you flip to the second page, you'll see that's a total of $836,509. From that point, on the other side of the equation, we have looked at all of the budgets. We have made some adjustments, recommendations, and that's a 2.5-page document. And at the bottom of that, 2.5-page document, you will see that we've identified $836,509 that we would like to transfer to make the town to continue to move forward with these line item adjustments. There's been some hard decisions here, but at the end of the day, I think this is a good decision, and I would strongly encourage the Board of Selectmen to approve these line item transfers going forward so that we can take care of our staff and keep paying our bills.
Dave? So Jim, clarity for me and maybe for people at home. We go back to the 2023 approved budget. That budget with contractual obligations met and other things became our 2024 default budget. The 2025 default budget is built off of the 2024 default budget.
23.
It goes back to the 23 budget with, again, added contractual obligations that were required in 24 and in 25?
So the term contractual obligations, I think, is the really slippery slope here. For example, you have an employment agreement with me. I have some employment agreements with department heads, but that is not necessarily related to wage adjustments.
Correct. Well, I'm just talking about contractual obligations as a whole, bond payments, all sorts of things. If we have payments due on vehicles or equipment or something like that, anything that we are contracted to do, that adds up to, I want people to understand, that's why the default budget for this year is going to be a little bit higher than what it was the previous year and a little bit higher than what the approved budget was in 2023, because there is still monies that have to be spent by state statute, by us, that adds on to those budgets.
You're 100% correct, Brian. So, for example, the collective bargaining agreements. Yep. When we presented the collective bargaining agreements to the voters in the warrant articles, it identified these are the costs for the future years of the contract. Mm-hmm. So that told the voters, this is what it's going to cost us in 23, 24. This year, we had renegotiated. We had a warrant article. That warrant article had what the cost for 25, 26, and 27 will be. So those will become part of the default budgets in the future if we have one. The other one is our debt service, right? The voters approved debt service for the public safety building, Pop Whalen, sewer expansion projects, water projects, et cetera. We have no opportunity to not make those payments. Therefore, they are part of the default budget calculation.
And if I could, Dave?
Well,
Brian got my first question answered, and I appreciate that. My other, just a comment for clarity. You're in a default budget. You can't open a new department. We can't open a new department of Doge. That would not be permitted. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we can't be in the business of being in default and opening up new things to do. That would be an illogical expansion. Plus, it's just not against statute to do that. And just to follow on the piggyback the comment, if an employee gets a compensation adjustment in 2025, and we were all of a sudden to go back into a default in 2026, that compensation adjustment reverts back to before they got the compensation adjustment in 2025. Or actually earlier, it would be 23, right?
That is correct.
So just again, and Brian's right, we got to make sure people get this one. So in 23, I'm making the number up, your pay was X. In 2024, compensation adjustment was made, let's say 2%. It's X plus 2%. The default comes along, that X plus 2% goes back to X in 2024.
For the default calculation, correct.
Okay, in 2026 or 2025, we make a compensation adjustment of X plus 5%. And if we go back into default, that X plus 5% goes back to the X, which is in 2023.
Correct.
Thank you.
So in other words, Jim, you're telling us that the department heads are taking care of the raises of 2024 in their budgets, and we're looking for a new 5% in 2025.
That is correct, Linda.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
So I would like to go back to the next to last page, when you presented it to us on March 26th. And you told us that the Board of Selectmen had a list of items that had no impact to the municipal operations.
This is page 67, Linda?
I think so. It's kind of hidden.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
it
down
is
here in the
60.
corner,
Yeah,
67.
yeah.
243,000 on the bottom
Yeah.
right. Yep.
So, and what we have in front of us today is that you have found enough money in the personal administration, and that's the health insurance, because we have 10 positions vacant, and you can calculate that we have enough of that leftover funds until May 1st. And part of the reason you can do that is there is a 1-month lag between bringing them on and when they get in our health insurance.
Yes, that is correct. So after the first meeting that we had about this, I believe it was on the 27th, I think it was, I heard what was being talked about here, and we went back in and we looked at what we had put together in the budget presentation. We had found a couple of areas that we had not correctly adjusted. I showed them to you on the April 2nd meeting. Those areas were identified. As well, I went into the personnel administration, as you referred to as the healthcare line. That healthcare line for the 80 full-time general fund employees is $2.6 million. In going through there, understanding that we had 10 vacancies at that time, above and beyond the police position that was surrendered for the balance of the year, and the billing and collections position that was surrendered for the year. We were able to look at those additional 10 positions and what those employees were previously receiving for health insurance, and we were able to come up with about $139,000 in savings from January 1 through May 1st. And exactly what you said, how can I calculate that through May 1st? Because if an employee comes on today, they are not going to be able to be eligible for health care until May 1st. So I feel very comfortable with that number, knowing that we have filled one position, we have a conditional job offer out for another position, and we're actively interviewing for another position.
But if next year we get a default budget and we're fully staffed, we will not have this 100 and some odd thousand that we're getting, which we have this year. The only issue I have with this whole budget is I'm still concerned with Public Works. And this is the second year they have taken a significant cut. And the one area I am particularly concerned is our maintenance and our drainage, culverts. And I would like to put some money in that fund. If I am looking around $12,000 back into Public Works, I'd love to do more, but I think, $12,000 would definitely help them. That's a big hit. And what's going to happen is our drainage is not going to be done, and that has to do with our water quality. We know that we have a bunch of dirt roads, and that if they aren't maintained, you're going to have more potholes, and they don't get the care that they need, and we don't get to all the drains along the side of the road, and it just digs our hole a little deeper. So I was wondering if there's a way we can come up with 12,000 and give it at least something to work, and I'm particularly interested in the drainage and the road maintenance.
Dave?
Paul?
With your permission, Linda, and Dave's permission, of course, I'd like to just ask Jim, could you take, at least me, my feeble mind through these pages? Is this the one you passed out just at the beginning of the meeting, where you solved an $836,000 509? So, and maybe Casey can answer it. Is the first part of this where you're getting the money from? Is this like a sources and uses kind of a conversation?
No, the first portion of this is the money that we need.
So the
to
first thing
make
is where I need to
ourselves
put it. All right, so it's a uses and sources. So where I need to put the money, $836,000, distributed across all of these different functions. And then the sources of those funds are coming from all of these things that you identify as line item transfers to maintain municipal operations. Is that
Correct.
It's okay, so it's a uses and sources, not a sources and uses conversation. Okay. And again, with your permission. So just draw your attention to, because I want to talk about the highway as well. Draw your attention to the second page, debt service, default budget number 1616,899, adjusted budget 1519,601. So this is the sources side. How did that work? How did you get 97,000 out of that?
Sure. So, as discussed in the meeting of the 27th, we were able to put bond monies for the public safety building into a standalone account. We utilized, or will be utilizing, thanks to the voters, based on the warrant article, $175,000 for final upfitting costs of the public safety building. The $97,298 that you are speaking of is the balance of those interest funds as of the date this document was produced. The Board of Selectmen, by statute, have the authority to utilize that money for either A, putting it into a warrant article for a project associated with the building, or B, they can utilize it in a line item transfer path to pay down principal only on the bond payment for the building.
So we are making a principal payment?
That is a portion of a principal payment to the public safety building.
And then the other portion is the fit up?
The 175, correct, that is for
fit up.
final fit up.
Okay. I got just one more. Okay. And we, where was it? Rentals and leases, which is up above. Rentals and leases default 19.2.12.9. What is that, Jim?
I'm sorry, Paul, I got to find it.
I'm sorry. If you go down, you go to with the debt service principal, run your eyeballs up to the first third of the page, almost the first half. It says line Department 45206, account 440, rentals and leases 19.9.12.9. What are we doing there?
So rentals, this is a rentals and leases line. This was the conversation that I had with Parks and Rec Administration. When I sat down with Christine, I said, look, we are looking at a 5-year run rate, and I don't remember it right off the top of my head. It was either we've over budgeted or have not been able to utilize $50,000 of the budget or $75,000 of the budget, I don't remember. So I am suggesting that we use that $50,000 of Beach's budget for helping to perform the line item transfers. You as a department head go in and look at your budget and find where you may be able to make that $50,000 worth of adjustments. And she was able to identify $500 in reductions of leases, which she may be able to speak to.
And I do apologize, I have one more. Last page, line 44, Department 44173, agencies, senior, center, and meals,
Yep, so this is one of those weird ones, right? A couple years ago.
$25,000.
Yep, a couple years ago, the budget got approved with what was going on at the seniors. That money was not given to that program, and as a result of that, they didn't take it. It stayed as part of the budget, and as a part of the default calculation over the past 2 years, that $25,000 gets added back into the budget as the default calculation.
So it was put back in because it was in default, but it was taken out and used as a source of funds.
Correct.
For these other items which you're showing on the uses page, which is page 1.
Correct.
Dave.
Okay, thank you.
So I got a couple of quick questions. Is there any difference in this document that's on our desk today than the one that you gave us 6 days ago?
Is the date 3/27/2025 on the one 5 days ago?
I don't have a date on it, that's why I'm just curious.
I think that one may simply be half of it, so it.
Oh, no, I
was-
had the whole thing. I got the whole thing, I got
But
all
6
5 pages.
days ago, you had half, because I came in Monday morning to Jim and said, I don't
You're
see
a lucky guy. You
salaries.
got the full document.
I got the full document,
We
I
only
got
got a half
five, I got
one.
5 pages.
Yeah, but you didn't get it
But your
on
question
6
stands.
days ago. You got it this week.
And,
But your question stands.
and the, aren't all of these also in the default budget, or most of them in the default budget presentation that we went through for an hour while we were
Correct.
here? Okay, so that answers me those 2 questions. So we've had all this documentation and we've had time to digest it. My other question is, and this is where I need help, on the difference between the default budget and adjusted budget and increase and decrease on salaries, how do we calculate that?
So we sit down, we know that we made a wage adjustment. You received a memo, January 9th, I believe it was, in non-public session, that had a list of recommendations for wage adjustments.
Yeah.
I believe that total gross number, all in for wages and wage-related benefits for all general fund employees was $110,000.
Okay.
Right there.
We came back, we actually programmed the numbers in. Now, we've had some change in staff.
Yep.
We've had a couple other items which have occurred. And we actually programmed the numbers in based on a equation of 13 weeks at one pay rate, 39 weeks at a second pay rate,
There's our problem.
and that 39 weeks of that new salary is what the increase is represented.
Thank you, because I was banging my head against the wall going, how can I find the 5%?
And he kept on saying to me, what is it? I said, we don't have the figures. I can't do
Okay,
it.
so I just needed to know where that came from, because I'm like, this one's 3.66%, this one's 3.45%. So, and I knew, I said to Linda, I said, there's got to be a formula that they
There is.
used that I just don't get.
Yep.
And so
That is
now
the
I know
formula.
where it came from and where these numbers are propagated from. So I'm good with that. The only other thing that was confusing to me is the first line item is 41302 113 town manager, and then when you go down a third of the way down the page, you hit another 41302 113 town manager and 41302 113 town manager. So seeing that in 3 different places, was just wondering,
Okay, so,
And 220 is duplicated, and 230 is duplicated, and 231 is duplicated, and I know there's a reason, I just got to understand.
okay, so can you run the numbers for me one more time?
So if you look at the very top of the transfer recommendations, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and then if you go to, after there's a break, it says town manager, and then it says clerical salaries, you have the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines with the same department number and account number.
Sure. So when you look at the 113 supervisory salary, that adjustment includes myself. It also includes the assistant town manager position. It includes under 133 phone stipend, 220 payroll taxes, 230 retirement, 231 ICMA retirement, and then you go down further, 112 is the adjustment for Amy. The 113 is actually my adjustment. And the second 113 would be Casey's adjustment. And then the payroll taxes, retirement, and ICMA numbers are based on the raises issued to Casey and myself. Does that help you?
Okay. So
Because we're not able to create new lines.
The pay adjustment.
Because we're not able to create new lines,
Yep.
that number, that first line is Casey's base wage
Okay,
and whatnot.
okay.
Did that answer your question?
Dave?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First of all, I went through the March 26 presentation and did my own spreadsheet to make sure that we had caught everything, and I was satisfied. That's why I came into Jim and said, I don't see where the salaries are, so we got that one straightened out. And my second thing is I went back and I was trying to figure out how to answer the question about why we would leave in the assistant town manager when the deliberative session had voted it out. And we all know that once that default budget went out, all that went out, and we had the regular, but we then have a default budget that we can do what we want with. But I wanted to answer the question of what happened. Why was it so difficult to understand what was in that Public Works Administration budget? And so I looked at that, and I went back and looked at the television or the video of it. And at the 2025 deliberative sessions, there was a discussion regarding the assistant town manager position as a new position in which $168,000 was moved from the town engineer position to fund the assistant town manager. And it said it was on page 17 of the presentation, but it wasn't on that page. It was, or I couldn't find it on page 17 on what presentation they were looking at. The town engineer position was funded at $188,650. The finance director clarified that the funds for the assistant town manager position came from the engineer position, that there was no funding for the engineer's position in the 2026 budget, even though the town was still actively looking for a town engineer. The funding in the Public Works Department administrative budget was for the Public Works Director, and that is correct. I'll hand this out, and if a couple board members, you two are going to have to share, but you two can see. And I'll talk about that later. A member of the public asked John McDonald to discuss what was the budgetary impact of removing the assistant town manager, the impact to town staff, and where the decrease would come if the assistant town manager's position was removed. Mr. McDonald stated that he would prefer the engineer's position be removed. So everybody still thought that engineer position was in there. and that is not the case. It was the Director of Public Works. So I went back and I looked at how did we account for the administration in the 2023 budget. And Steve Randall's salary was in highway and streets 50%, Public Works garage 10%, Public Works building 5%, and 35% in solid waste. The Public Works administration was the town engineer, and that person had 60% in Public Works administration, 20% in water, and 20% in sewer. And that was the same thing that happened in 2024. When you come to 2025, all of Steve Randall's salary was in the Public Works administration, which there was no town engineer in that budget. But what also took me a while to figure out that we used to allocate to each of the water collection and sewer collection. In the 2028, we didn't allocate to those enterprise funds. Instead, it was in the administrative allocation. So the administrative allocation went up, but if you looked across, you wouldn't have seen his salary in the water and sewer that you would have had in the past. So that's why it was confusing. It took me a while to kind of figure out, I knew pieces of it, exactly what had happened here. So it was partly because we kept on changing what we meant by Public Works Administration, what that supervisory salary. And when Dave Ford was there, it was this division out. So this was a significant change, and I think because it was there, people thought it was still the town engineer. So that was not the case. There is only there was no increase to the budget for another position, and that it makes sense to fund that assistant town manager because nobody really understood what was exactly happening with the different amounts in the budget. My last one is I'd like to make a motion to add $12,000 to the Public Works Department, and that the town manager somewhere is adjusting all those figures he's given us in order to do that.
Is there a second to that motion?
Jim looks like he wants to say something.
Just a question, that's all.
No second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Any discussion?
My reason is I think we're taking a big hit, and one of the areas I'm really concerned is in drainage, and that's water quality, and we already knew what happened with cyanobacteria, and if we don't have pipes and stuff and clean out our drainage ditches and do some of that work, we're affecting water quality. And so it seems out of the budget of $33 million and all the transfers that we can find another $12,000 to help him with that part of the budget.
So my question would just be to Jim, is it possible? How much time would you need to look at that? And do you think that there would be some other department or somebody or another that would be their suffrage? Would there be suffrage somewhere that we couldn't manage to stomach?
So, fair question, and I'll respond to it this way. You are looking for $12,000. We have identified the $836,509 with a transfer to come out of the personnel administration of $97,698, knowing that we have identified a total of about $139,000 in that line. So if you would like, I can certainly transfer that $12,000 out of that line if that's where you guys would like to see it or elsewhere.
So can I, Dave?
Paul?
So the reason I didn't second your motion, Linda, but I support the idea, is my first question when I heard you say, let's put 12 grand into, and by the way, noble concepts, right? Drainage and the like. My question is, what would be helpful? What specific problem can we solve with $12,000? My preference would be, if there's something that we know that it wasn't in the original budget, it wasn't in the default budget, but if there is something that we know that is going to come up and potentially bite us in some part of our body, should we, this is going to cause our town manager to pull out what's ever left of us here, should we kind of talk about it a little bit and maybe modify the budget and then go find the money? Because I think, I have not to keep the cards too close to the vest. We have been, right in here, we have been having a lot of conversations, good ones, about what's going on down there on Cary Beach. We have a sewer conversation going on. You've quoted our former highway and public works director, who has reminded us that place down there is wet and getting wetter. That was his comment. That kind of helped me think things through. We may have a drainage problem down there. We know that, and Wolfboro Waters knows, that we have an issue flowing down into Whitegate Lane. That is a problem. And I don't know whether we did it or how it happened, but all we know is water is going into Lake Winnipesaukee and probably transiting over private land, but definitely coming down from public land. If we could target, and there may be others, I'm sure there's a couple of others in North Wolfboro, but those are the ones that are near and dear to my heart. If we could target and say, let's put, I'm making the number up, $50,000, $30,000 to deal with a drainage issue, as long as Jim doesn't say to us, it's out of bounds, we've already thought it through. I'd be keen to do a targeting of additional funds.
Well, I guess I was thinking that the drainage, and part of you talked about going down Whitegate. That's kind of where I was looking at the material. But I don't want to pin it to that, because if we get whacked by a big storm, we may not have the time and the manpower to do it. So I looked at what is the material that if he did want to do that, he'd have to have.
Yep.
That's all I was going after. I felt it would box that money in when there may be something that comes up in the year that trumps putting it. But that was the material I was thinking of when I went to, when I took that amount.
So when you say material, you're talking about
Piping, stuff, yeah.
Stuff.
And that's what the line was in terms of materials for drainage and stuff. When I asked Steve, he said it was 26. I was kind of looking at that project. I learned it'd be about 10,000, so I said 12. But I do not want to pin it to that, because if something really blows, I think he should be able to use it for something else. And that was the water quality project that I was thinking of. Is it a piece of what he needs? Yes. But I thought we were going to do it another way, and at this point we have it all together, and so I was looking at $12,000 more.
Could I, one more, Dave?
Yep.
John, actually, John, can I do one more?
Sure.
So, okay, so your bid here is, let's buy the stuff. Okay? Let's not put a tag on it and say, XYZ project. But if we don't get, your term, whacked, we would want to do that project. And if wanting to do that project, and you, somehow a number of 25, 26 came up,
That was what the line for drainage
Yeah.
that he was going to lose was 26, and about 12 would take care of the piping for that project.
so, again, just in my feeling, and I'm stepping on John's time, and I apologize. So my feeling would be, okay, why not think about appropriating, as long as Jim's up, why not think about appropriating the money to buy the stuff and appropriating the money to have, I wouldn't say earmarked, but kind of pointed at that one. But if we get whacked, all bets are off, we go someplace else. That's kind of where I'd go. I'm sorry.
John?
So, Jim, can you give us the number that's available for the engineer's position for the Public Works?
How much is left?
What would be the amount that's available for that position?
Well, most of those funds have been transferred for the assistant town managers.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking what that money number is that we could, before we transfer that money to the assistant town manager.
I don't have that right off. Casey, do you have that? Thank you.
Sure.
60% that Linda, I'm supposed to call you the chairman. The 60% that Linda was referring to is on, my pages are a little different than yours, is $72,017, and then taxes of $4,735, and retirement of $8,000.
So, can you give me a number on that? Not 90,000?
94.
94. So, my position here is that Linda makes a really good point for putting money in the Public Works budget. I think I'd be fair to say I'd like to see 60,000 put back into the Public Works budget, so when things do arise, Steve doesn't have to take it out of his Public Works budget, and he can use that for engineering services, buying pipe, and the things that he needs to buy. So we'll vote on your motion, but at least you know where I'm coming from at this point.
So Jim, I have a question. There's 94,000, if I'm hearing this correct, $94,090 left in that engineer's position. Is that what Casey just said?
No.
No, I believe that was the total number.
That was the total number.
Total nut.
Okay, so you said that there's a portion of money where we can get the $12,000 for Linda's ask, correct?
Correct.
So couldn't we still, if there's money there, later in the year, do another line item transfer?
Sure.
So,
You could do that.
So-
But I think the question becomes, you got to start planning now to do the work and what the costs of the work are going to be and get the people on board to do the work. And I'm not sure what the timing of that would look like. Steve would be able to answer that much better than I would. So I think it all boils down to the scope of work to be completed.
So can I ask a question, Dave?
Yeah?
So your notion would be, I'm not trying to put words in your notion would be 12,000 over here, let's not do the rest, but later on, we may have extra money, and then we could fund it at that time.
correct.
Okay. My response, I think, is the same as, could be similar to Jim's, and that is, and that's why I'm pushing back on your notion too. You can't, to me, you can't just buy the stuff and then wait, we'll get back to you with whether you can actually do the stuff. I would say, buy the stuff, we'll fund you to do the stuff. We're not going to point you at a particular place for your reason because we don't want to get whacked and then have dedicated an earmark. So I say fund it, and if we find that, and that gives the person an opportunity to start planning, because you got to let bids, you got to do all the things, you got to allocate personnel. I'd say fund it all, and if it doesn't materialize, pull it back.
Well, I did get, oh, go ahead.
I get somebody back here
Yeah.
that wants to say something.
I was going
The
to say
voice of
something from
reason,
him.
the guy that we're talking about wants to come out.
Well, my only concern would be, you're saying that we're going to have a problem sometime.
That's right.
We are at some time.
So
Steve Randall?
Steve Randall, Public Works, if I may, I think we might be overthinking this a little bit. This was a streets and highways maintenance project, in my mind. So this is not a road construction project, which would have been subbed out at X amount of money for X amount of time for funding. So the hours, the machinery, the fuel is already captured in my operating budget, okay? So as much as I would love to take another $50,000, the way that this works, you know, if you want to vote to give me 12 to buy culvert, that is fantastic. I still have to reach out to secure easements. This was always planned to be a fall project anyway, so that I have the time. So all of those things can happen anyway, whether it's 50,000 or 95,000. You know, if you want to give me all
Or 12,000.
or 225,000, I lost in the default. I would be more than happy to take it and I can spend it.
Okay.
But if you give me 95, then somewhere else somebody's going to lose something. And if we're going to do this together, I kind of think that needs to be taken into consideration too. So I would love to, if you want to give me the 12 to buy the culvert, I could buy the culvert tomorrow and put it up at Wickers with a little tag in my mind that this is where we're going to use it. If Mother Nature decides to kick us in the butt in a couple months, then that's going to go there instead. But at least we would have a step towards that direction.
Dave?
If you don't want to vote for the 12, then that's fine. Don't vote for the 12. And as we get further in the year, and if everything goes well everywhere, and I have $12,000 worth of drainage culvert somewhere, we can continue with the project. It is what it is.
Paul?
All right, let's stop dancing around the maypole. Are we running water down the hill onto Whitegate Lane?
Yes.
Is that a project that we did that accelerated that flow?
Potentially.
Kinda.
Sort of. See when you try to get clarity?
Yes.
Kind of, sort of?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so is this something you want to do later, or should we do it now?
I would like to do it. Yes.
Okay, do you have enough money to do it?
Extra 12 grand wouldn't hurt.
No.
Yes.
Would that do it?
Yes.
12,000 would do it?
That'll buy my material, yes.
And where's the labor coming from? Because you've already allocated your labor other places.
But I already allocated, my labor is a fixed cost.
Okay.
Because it's in the budget, so it is what it is. So it's just,
So something in your remit, if your labor is allocated, unless I misunderstand, something in your bag of tricks is not going to get done so that you can move over there. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay. So why would you do that?
It becomes more of a triage look to me. So I had a rough idea in the fall, is how I put it together. Sit down with the guys, we go through it. This is what we like to do. We put together the operating budget to compensate for what we want to do. But it's not finalized until the budget is done.
Yeah, right.
Right? So I still have yet to do that because the budget's not finalized.
Okay.
So once I know what I have for money, then we will go through and see what we're actually going to do.
So the flip side of that question is if you accede to Selectwoman Murray's desire to put $12,000 in to buy the stuff, you're saying you could use it elsewhere if you have a you-know-what happens event.
Correct?
Okay,
Culverts are-
but then I get back to the basic question. Should you fix that thing out there?
Yes, we should.
Is that on the
but
top of your list?
It is right relatively high on top of the
Then
list,
we
yes.
should fund it. And what you're saying, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not, you're saying, give me the cash to go buy the stone and the culvert, I'll find the operating dollars to do it? Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, you can't argue against that.
Unless we have a big,
Unless,
huge,
because again, because I can't say this enough. We can talk about this.
Unless we
This is
have
what we're
another
gonna
Haynes
do.
Hill Road situation,
Correct.
a blow-up.
'Cause if the roads go away, all right, fixing a town road is more important than fixing that. I will say that, because people have to get in and out of their houses, they have to traverse the roads. So that would take priority, which is why I say triage. As it stands right this minute, sure.
I'm not keen on suggesting more cash for him, but I'd be keen on saying we need to put more cash in our, whatever we want to call it, in Jim's pocket or Sam's pocket. She's got it in the drawer in case we need it.
I'd like to move the question.
I'd like to ask Steve a couple more questions for a second. So is it on private property?
The work that we are going to do,
The one that this discussion is
some of it is
revolving?
yes. Some of it is yes. We have to have an easement for where it connects down lower end.
So what makes us absolutely sure, I'm pretty familiar with Whitegate Lane. I did some work there 15 years ago, and I remember the road was washed out 15 years ago.
The problem,
yeah, we,
so
be careful.
I have to be careful with some of this, okay? So part of the problem is Whitegate Lane. Part of the problem is up above in how the water got redirected, okay? So if you're familiar with it, I can keep this somewhat simple. On along Partridge, there's 3 outlets that cross Partridge that go down over the hill. Okay, outlet 1, 2, and 3. Outlet 3 is on the forest side of Jiminy, not part of the discussion. Outlets 1 and 2. When the road construction was redone, the water was allocated more heavily to outlet 1 instead of evenly distributed between 1 and 2. It changed. And when it did that, it overflows outlet 1 down over the hill to become an issue. Down in Whitegate, they have their own issues as far as road maintenance, culvert size, things like that. They have done some of the work they need to do. What we are proposing to do now is to fix that shift to rebalance the water between outlets 1 and 2.
On our property.
On our property. What has to happen down on private property is just a simple from me to the screen to redefine the swale so that it channels it better. It's a day or two's worth of work. We do need an easement, and we've had conversations with the landowner. They are open to it. So we just have to put pen to paper and to make that happen.
So do you know of other areas in town like Mill Street that would require road work and other areas also?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Of course. The
list is eternal.
The list is eternal,
Okay.
without a doubt.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Brian's moved the question.
Yes.
So all those in favor of Linda's motion to add $15,000? 12,000 to the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Thank you. Anybody got any other questions before we move forward here?
I would like to
Was that
make,
4-1?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one more motion. I would like to make a motion for the town manager to, if he can, find $2,500 to support the fireworks for the 4th of July. If he cannot, I will donate the $2,500 myself or have the citizens of Wolfboro help me raise it.
Dave?
Just a minute.
That's a complicated motion.
Yeah.
Am I correct, Jim, that the fireworks are in this transfers? Those items that you had out on the side saying that $243,000 that we had to make a decision on, my understanding is that you covered it all?
I did. That was the one item, and you can see it in the last page of the presentation given last week. Fireworks will require an additional $4,000, which at that point we thought was $4,000. However, Christine reached out to them. Just for clarity, they will not do a $5,000 show that was discussed previously. They would come in June and do a $5,000 show, but not on the 4th of July. And the actual increase to the budget is $2,500, not $4,000. And that $2,500 is not included in the line item transfers at this time. $2,500 is the right number, correct, Christine? Thank you.
Yeah, it's 15.5 total, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And we were at an EDC event with about 80 business owners in town, the majority of them in the downtown area, and I took it upon myself to ask a bunch of them, should we have fireworks this summer in Wolfboro? And I got a resounding, you better not stop our fireworks.
Ooh. Oh, there you go. Okay, so there's a motion that you made
Wait.
that said either 15.5 or an extra 2,500?
$2,500.
Or you're coming up with the money?
If Jim can find it, if he can't find it, I'll donate it, and I probably have more than that donated from the citizens of town that will help me.
Do we have a second to that?
Sure, I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, Brian.
I will make that happen and have that ready for you at next board meeting.
And
I'd
where, do we all chime in on that? Did you vote?
I did. I'd like to now make a motion myself to take $50,000 to put in Steve Randall's roads and improvement budget for repairs.
And
Do what? Yeah. Say that again?
I'd like to take $50,000 from the engineer's money and put it into Steve Randall's budget for road improvements and repairs.
Is there a second?
can I make a comment?
Sure.
There's not that money in the budget. That's what I just went through in that whole thing. That's Steve Randall's salary. There is no money in that budget for a town engineer.
I just wanted to make the motion. If it doesn't go anywhere, then it doesn't go anywhere.
So wait, hang on a second, just you seconded? Did you second?
I didn't.
No, there was no second. So I think the question, the comment you made, John, in your motion was that you wanted to remove monies from the town engineer budget of which there isn't any left. That's the point you're getting. If the motion is, I'm not trying to correct you, but if the motion is appropriate another $50,000 for the highway department, that's a different motion.
Okay, that would be the motion.
Okay. Second for discussion.
I mean,
I don't, well, I personally, in some respects, don't think that we should be doing this. This is a position the town manager should do and tell us. We are a town manager form of government, and it's his decision, not ours, to make with some of these movements within the budget. He's already given us 4 pages of stuff already. I don't think we should just be nitpicking, personally, that we should be the ones telling him how to do his job. That's why we hire a town manager and not a town administrator. And that's a big reason. We are not town administrator form of government with town manager form of government. There is a big difference. So, any other discussion?
I do. I have a question. My feeling is that one of the jobs of the Board of Selectmen is to oversee the budget, and that's what I see us doing here, not doing his job. He gave us the material and the places where we could move things, and without that, we would be lost. We need him to do that kind of stuff. John, I'd love to do that too, but I think we've come to a point that I don't know where you'd get that $50,000 to move. And that's why I picked 12. So I think your idea would be lovely. I just don't see where I'd get the money to do it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Can I speak to it? Can I speak to it?
Sure.
Since I seconded it, I'm glad we did second it. There's an incongruity. You know, we had this conversation earlier about, hey, could you pony up another $12,000? And then there was hey, could we pony up another 50? the number is irrelevant. The action is what I think is important. I agree with the chair. This is not, with respect to you, John, this is not our duty. If there was an obvious thing in front of us that we think was overlooked, I'd be keen to wanting to do it. But our duty is to let Jim and his management team run this operation. And I even bristled a little bit with the 12,000, but since we went there, I don't want to be that directive. I think we get observed as being directive, and I think we probably shouldn't do it. So I seconded it, but I'm not going to vote in favor of it. But I wanted to get it out on the table so you could get a chat, okay? Thank you.
You can move the question.
Okay. We have a motion to deal with $50,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No. Motion's defeated. Okay, next on our agenda, and I'm going to move something around here. Because the next thing on our agenda is non-public session, I'm going to move the public comment up to now. So is there anybody in the public wants to make any statements or anything to us before we go into non-public? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to go into non-public.
Move to go into non,
When are we
Second.
going to do other business? Can we do that first, too?
do we have other business on the agenda?
We could. Do you have some other business?
So yes, I do. Just a quick one.
You put the phone away.
No, the phone is my other business. It is, I think that we need to have a written document, if we don't, from a licensed installer that assures us that the pumps and tanks on our sewer extension lines are installed of the correct model, make, size, pressure, and that they should provide that documentation to our code officer. If we don't do this, we need to do this, I think.
So I actually spoke with DES yesterday.
Yeah.
Linda was on the call. It is not town responsibility.
I understand
of any
that.
kind. So if we open ourselves up to doing that, then we are taking on that responsibility.
Well, we're not inspecting it. I'm saying we are requiring a licensed, whoever installs that pump is going to be a licensed and certified installer. They're going to work on the tank. Their job is that we should require that homeowner, when they have a licensed person install that they supply us with all that information so we know what went in there.
So my only counter to that is, and obviously you guys you're the bosses.
No, we're not. You are.
Is if this is you and you put the wrong pump in,
Yep.
it's only going to affect you. It's not affecting the whole line.
What if I put a pump in that was better for me? Could there be a pump that's better for me that could damage the system? What if multiple people put in pumps that were higher pressure?
It doesn't matter.
It would not damage
It's not going to
anything.
affect the line.
It would not affect the line.
It's
at
not
all.
going to affect the
It's a
line.
low pressure line to begin with.
So if anything, because of the pump that is designed for that, people are going to put in smaller pumps, lesser pumps, because they're cheaper.
Yeah.
In which case, the only thing that is going to do is hurt them. Everybody that is on that line get the same packet with the same pump, the same specifications of what to use. That's all we can do. We go to the edge of the street, to the shutoff, that is it. We tell you this is what you need to do. If you choose to do something different, that is on you. It's your responsibility to make sure that you do it right.
As long as you can guarantee me that
not gonna hurt the line.
by 8 people installing the wrong pump, it doesn't affect our line,
It's not going to affect our
then
line.
I'm okay with it.
It's going to affect them. So it behooves them to put in the proper things. But that was a direct question that I asked of them yesterday, just to make sure we were on the same page.
Now,
Okay.
the other thing is, when they install those pumps, they have to have a licensed electrician install it.
And we're just running.
So all the disconnects and all the right wiring, waterproof, and all that stuff has to be done.
Correct.
They have to take a permit out from out back, and it has to be inspected.
And a licensed plumber.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear your comment, Jim.
Well, only a licensed plumber if it's inside the house. If they're putting the pump in the tank and As the installer, you can do all of that plumbing fixture and stuff, those things yourselves. So they don't have to pull the plumbing permit per se, but again, it is on them to make sure that
They
they
have
do the
to
right thing.
take out an electrical permit.
Yes.
So my only question was, I wanted to make sure that we were 100%, and it was, stated at a meeting that we are 100% okay that people installing the wrong equipment in their system will not hurt our system, will not plug it, will not stop it from operating, will not do anything.
Those pumps are not designed to work in series. They are designed as single pumps to work for your house to pump that through the thing. So if all 5 of you are on that line and you have the right pump and these 4 don't, it doesn't matter. It's not like your pump kicks on, then Paul's pump kicks on, takes it a little bit more. It doesn't work that way. Yours pumps all of your stuff there. Paul's all of his stuff there. So if it's not the right one, that's Paul's problem.
So my concern was, if they were all high pressure, would it create too much pressure in the line? Or if they were all undersized, would it not move the effluent, and will the effluent back up for everybody?
No, it'll only back up for them because there's check valves. So it can't come, if it's in the main line, it can't come back into the house. Okay. There's also pressure bleed offs all the way up through there. So if for some reason there's a pressure spike, let's argue with that. There could be. It's going to blow off.
Okay.
The pressure releases will take care of that. And that goes all the way from what we put in all the way to the pump station. All along Sewell Road, there's pressure blow offs in those manholes.
All right.
Okay, so
Then I'm okay with it. Fine.
So to Brian's question, actually, he kind of leads into it. So my understanding is there was a start date and then there was a end date when we required everybody to be hooked onto this line. Have we met that date?
So there's 2 parts to that. We had the line came on at the end of April of last year, but the project was not technically completed until October. So we're using October as the date to everybody within that year time frame has to turn on. So by the end of this month, we will send out new letters again as a reminder, hey folks, the line has been operational now. This is your drop dead date to get it done.
So what action do we take after that?
Well, I don't have any authority I have no teeth, but
So you, as the Board of Selectmen, do have the authority to lien the property. You do have the authority to go down and do the work yourselves and put the lien on the property. But we don't have the funds to really do that type of work right now. But that is an option.
Just wanted to ask the question.
Yep, fair question.
I think the question that's being asked is, do we have any things that we really want to fess up and say we haven't met deadlines for connections? And I think I'm hearing, no, we have met deadlines for connections. If we have somebody who says, I'm not connecting for whatever reason, do we know what we need to do on next steps? And I think the answer I heard is, yes, we do. And because there has been, and I think, John, for the benefit of John, respectfully, you haven't been, or maybe you've been watching, but there are some questions about, has there been, shenanigans, wink winks, that kind of stuff. And I think this is an opportunity to clear air.
Okay, is there any other business? I didn't see any public comment, so I'll entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So
Thank you.
we're not touching the Central 243 list?
No, that's what